Welcome. We'll formally open the meeting in just a few minutes. Thank you for joining us. We'll get started just a moment. I call this meeting of the South Bay School Board, District number 206 to order. This is a special business meeting at the beginning to interview applicants to represent the district in the superintendent search that will be upcoming this year. Just to give a quick overview of the process, we will be having the 3 interviews for the 3 different firms here tonight. These will be interviews by the board and leadership team of the applicants. The video of these interviews, along with the proposals, will go up on our school website shortly, along with a link to a survey for those who would like to give their feedback on the interviews and the proposals. There is a QR code in the agenda that takes you to that survey. For those who are present, there are also several posters for it up around the room if you'd like to work on your feedback as you hear the interviews. These surveys will be up until mid-June, shortly before our business meeting in June, at which point they'll be closed down and collated and sent to the board so that we can take them into account as we make our decision at our June business meeting. With that out of the way, I would like to welcome Dr. McDuffie of Hazard Young Attia and Associates. Thank you for joining us. All these interviews will be done by Zoom, so thank you for joining us here online.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the invitation to interview.
I can't hear you, Dr. McDuffie.
Hey,
oh,
thought I unmuted.
Just a moment.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience.
You can hear us, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Just a moment. We're still working on our side. The wonders of technology are you get to stay in your office. The problems of technology are it sometimes takes a moment to get started.
Exactly.
And we will make sure you do not lose out on time due to this technical glitch. Can you try real quick?
Check, check. Can you hear me yet?
So it's in our room speaker. It's not on the Zoom. Yeah.
So we're gonna have to put a mic at.
Okay. So for the short term, let's do that. If you want to just, yep, put that mic on. Let's try now.
Okay. Does that work? Okay. Checking.
I can hear you. Let's make sure everyone can.
Okay.
Yeah. Director Jackson? Can, yeah. Ah, yes.
Hang on a sec. Took a pause.
Except for us.
Thank you so much for your patience. Is that it?
All right, Chris, try again.
Could you,
It's a test.
Check, check. Good afternoon.
much better, thank you.
All right. That's great. Thank you.
So we're getting a slight echo here, but we'll do our best. Thank you very much for hanging in with us.
Sure. Should I go ahead and start?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Again, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to meet with you and share a little bit about our firm and our process and how we can be excellent partners for you in this important decision. Christy has the slides that I forwarded, and I appreciate your help very much, Christy. And I will just proceed to present a little bit of an overview, but please jump in at any time that you have questions, or hopefully we'll have a few minutes at the end as well to share a little bit more. But again, an honor to be with you here this afternoon. Next slide. We'd like to share a little bit about our firm, our process, our commitments, why we believe HYA stands out among all the search firms, and then an opportunity to answer any questions you might have for us. Next slide. A little bit about our team that would be working with you. Unfortunately, my colleague, Mr. John Bash, was not able to join us this afternoon. He's finishing up a search today, actually, and couldn't join us. So it would be John and me, the local search team. We both have, I guess, together about 80 years of experience in public education in the state of Washington. I'm on 43 years serving public educators and education systems in Western Washington, teacher, principal, and I was a superintendent in this Northwest ESD region for 17 years. It's a very special place to me, and I would be honored to work with all of you. In addition to my time with school districts, I also served in higher education for 26 years, training and mentoring superintendents at mostly Western Washington University, but some at Seattle Pacific University as well. So our connections to leaders across our state and of course across the country with our company is extensive. Next slide, please. A little bit more about our company. We're probably the longest in existence under the same ownership, over 36 years of superintendent and executive searches, 1,600 plus searches. What's very powerful about our company is over 100 and about 135 right now associates that make up our network across the country. So we're all helping one another to make sure we're finding the best fit for school districts across the country. And again, with that power of a national network, we know it's important to have a local team that understands the local environment. So John and I, again, both extensive experience in Western Washington in particular. We've also had extensive experience with searches, successful searches in Washington in the last several years. So we'd love to share a little bit more about that as well. We are so committed to community engagement, all of your constituents' voices being heard, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. We have an outstanding back office. Our home office is actually located just outside of Chicago. We have a full-time team there with IT support, et cetera. But we're also known for our regular responsive communication and support to our clients. Next slide. Our search process, like most firms, includes these 4 phases. That's engagement, recruitment, selection, and transition. And you'll see that the amount of time across the top varies a little bit, and it's very customizable. But these are typically the 4 phases. And I'd like to share a little bit more about each of those phases. If we could go to the next slide. So we take, as I mentioned, engagement very seriously. We understand that transparency and making sure that all voices are heard and regular communication about this process is critical to maintain trust with your students, staff, families, and communities. So we kick off engagement with this really important meeting with the board that establishes the timeline and the process and works out all of the details. So we'd love to launch that just as soon as possible. We also really value one-on-one interviews with each board member as soon as possible. I'm getting a lot of echo and feedback. I don't know if you all are as well, but I'll carry on. We would work with all of you to determine which individuals and constituent groups need these one-on-one or small group meetings with us. We value that personal time with your constituents. So we would work with you to make sure that I'm getting a message. I'm sorry. I was just wondering if I could do something on my end, but I'm not sure how to do that without muting my mic.
Oh, usually up along the top of the function keys, there's a turn off volume button that.
So turn the volume down.
Yeah. Oh, although then you won't be able to hear us as well.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that my opinion is the sound quality is sufficient, that we are absolutely understanding you.
Okay, let me just carry on, and I hope it's not too distracting to you. We would work to, again, identify all of the constituent groups to have sit-down meetings with us, and we value that time and that information so much. In addition, we would hold at least 1, maybe 2 community forums where it would be a come one, come all to share people's sentiments about the process and what they're looking for in their next superintendent. And in addition, we really recommend a survey of some sort, and I'll talk a little bit about your options in just a moment, because it can be a simple Google form survey, or it could be an extensive research-based survey that our company has developed. So you have a lot of range of options there, but all of this information gathered through the engagement phase turns into this leadership profile report that really determines the thinking about your greatest strengths, your areas for growth and opportunity, and then finally those characteristics that your constituents are looking for in the next superintendent. Next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. We are really flexible, obviously, in how and where we meet with these teams of folks or individuals. Very flexible, again, being local. We can be very flexible in being there in person or meeting people as their schedules allow. And again, the focus groups down in the bottom left, we would work with you to define those various groups to make sure that we have touched on everyone's voices being heard. Next slide. The second phase of recruitment starts simultaneously, really, to the engagement phase. So those first two phases are happening parallel track. We would be posting the position just as soon as possible on these three sites, WASA, WASDA, and HYA. Our site, our company's site has become really a clearinghouse nationally, a one-stop shop for all superintendent openings across the country. We get over 26,000 hits a month for people that are interested, that if they're looking to move to Washington, for instance, they would take a look at what's on HYA. We not only post the jobs that we're facilitating, but we post all jobs that other firms are hosting as well, just so that it can be a clearinghouse. So again, a really powerful tool. And then there are a couple other targeted postings that we could talk about if you are interested. Of course, if we're looking to ensure that we're reaching a diverse pool of candidates. So we have a lot of tools with this outreach. Again, our national network is so helpful in reaching out once we've determined what you're looking for. We have feelers out across the country. So we are seeking candidates, we are vetting candidates, we're pre-screening, we're doing reference checks and some background checks. And then we will compile all that information into a summary document for the board to review. And we believe as a company that the board should see all completed applications. I know that some firms do screen out and give you a slate of candidates for you to take a look at. You know, our philosophy is that the board should see all completed applications, but then we can help you with identifying those most qualified. So I can share a little bit more about that later as well. Next slide. We then help you identify from that pool of completed applicants how many you would like to advance to first round interviews, or what we would call semifinalists. And that's typically 5 to 7, usually 6 candidates that would be invited to interview on the first round. Again, those are about 60 to 90-minute interviews, typically with the board only. Another philosophical belief we have is that the process should remain confidential through the first phase, the first round. We know that candidates are very selective of which positions they'll apply for based on how public the process will be and at what stage it will become public. We know that we've enhanced our pools if the position is confidential until they make finalists. So that's our philosophy, and we're happy to talk further about that. But that would be then a 60 to 90-minute interview with the board, and we're helping you to craft the questions. We've got a huge bank of questions for you to choose from and to tailor, and we can help craft questions based on your leadership profile report. So from there, narrowing those candidates that were interviewed to the finalists. Again, those are usually 3 finalists, and they're invited to the district typically for the full marathon day, which usually becomes a 12 to 14-hour day, and it's all a test. It's a typical superintendent day. So making sure that all of your constituents can re-engage to meet these finalists, to sit on a panel or to attend a forum. And we have some great templates for you to take a look at. We encourage you to think about background checks, a more extensive, thorough background check by a third party, that's an option for you. And then, of course, selecting your superintendent. And we help you with contract negotiations as well, helping you with a data analysis, comparables, and the latest language that's in superintendent contracts, not only across Washington, but across the region. Next slide. So the tentative timeline that you saw in our proposal is simply that. It's a very rough estimate and recommendation for you to consider. You have to be commended for launching this process so early, and of course, Joe, commendations for announcing early to allow your board and your community to get a jump on this. Obviously, it puts you in the most competitive advantage getting out early. So this would be very doable. It could also be extended or contracted based on your desires. But the fact that you could have a new superintendent selected at least by February would be outstanding, because it would give you a lot of time in the spring for transition activities, engaging with the community before school is out. So that's tremendous, and this is just a rough draft. Next slide. So the fourth phase, of course, is transition. And again, we are walking alongside you to ensure that this is a successful new beginning for the community, the staff and the families, students. So we do include a workshop that has been well received. Just a half-day workshop to help with getting to know one another, set some initial goals, help establish some new norms, etc. So a lot more about that at a future date. And then just some additional supports that would be available should you be interested or there be a need. Next slide. In our proposal, we provided the overview of the fee. We believe this is a fair estimate. And again, we are retired soups. This isn't our primary source of income. And we want to be fair, and we understand tight budgets, especially for public school districts right now. So we believe it's honest and fair, and we're going to do everything we can to keep costs down as well. Next slide. So why HYA? Again, I mentioned we really believe that we are here to exceed your expectations and customize and support you throughout the process. We know that transparency throughout the process is critical, and we also know that all voices feeling heard and honored is important, and that is just one of my fundamental beliefs as well. So we work hard at that. We're going to maintain regular and open and honest communication, not only with the board, but we'll work with your team to make sure that there's a standing one-stop communications update on your website. And then finally, we've launched a new tool that has been really well received by boards, and that's the board portal. Next slide. Just a little bit about the portal. This is a dedicated place where we can ensure that all materials throughout the process are kept easily accessible. And this is also where we would upload the candidate's application materials that would be, confidential, obviously, for board members only. Much of this information that you see here would also be public information that you would also want to have available on your website. But we also know how important it would be for the board to have a one-stop shop for maintaining all of the materials that we would be going through together throughout the process. Next slide. So again, I love this picture, and love your website and all the great things that you are doing at South Whidbey. Obviously, I've been following this district for all of my career, and just really impressed with the work that you're doing. And we have guarantees that we want to do the very best we can for you, and we're happy to match any other prices, etc. So next slide. Again, thank you so much. sorry about the technical glitches. I understand. I would certainly rather have been there in person. I would have brought you all color copies of this PowerPoint, but we do the best we can, and I really appreciate the opportunity to present to you this afternoon, and I know you have a tight timeline. So any questions at this point?
Okay. Hi, Dr. McDuffie. We're going to see if we can make this as comfortable on your end as possible. And we currently have the sound off, so I can't hear you. So we will just time it when I finish my question. We'll turn the sound back on.
Okay.
So one of the questions that I have for you is, as a board, we've been discussing a lot about implicit bias and our own biases in how we want to go about with this search. And I'm wondering, from your search firm side, what checks, balances, systems do you have in place that check yours and the consultants who are recruiting superintendents for this position to check your own bias in this process?
Great question. First, I would just start with our company's philosophy about diversity, equity, inclusion, and a strong core belief. We are truly committed in ensuring that we are doing everything we can to recruit diverse candidates and to eliminate those biases. And we do, you might have seen a workshop, an interview workshop that we provide leading up just before the semifinalist interviews. And we've got really great materials for, it's a mini training basically on implicit bias, and some articles for the board to read. Of course, we've all been through training, and we ensure that we've done everything that we can in a short period of time to make sure those issues are addressed.
Do you have any like specific examples of ways that you recruit that help minimize barriers for diverse candidates? And when I speak of diversity, I don't necessarily just think of racial diversity, but also gender, orientation, all of those other buckets that we would consider.
Yeah, well, our track record really speaks for itself as well too, of the incredibly diverse candidate pools that we've been fortunate enough to recruit over the years. But of course, we do targeted outreach to at least a couple examples that we have great relationships with. For instance, the ALAS, the Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents, and NABC, the National Alliance of Black School Educators, for instance. So there can be some targeted outreach. And then we also, like I said, mentioned the specific trainings. We've also done even blind screening with a few districts to try to address some of that bias and potential discrimination. So there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of resources available.
Hi, Dr. McDuffie. Will you please give us a anecdote of a time where you made a placement, a superintendent placement that you're particularly proud of, and please highlight the superintendent's accomplishments post-placement as opposed to pre-placement?
That's a great question. There are so many, but one that comes to mind because I'm assisting them with some further work right now is Monroe. And Monroe has, you probably are aware in your region, has had some rocky challenges in these last several years. So it was a challenging time to come in as a search consultant and make sure that people's voices were heard and really listen to what are they looking for in their next superintendent. And what did they need to turn the corner, to move forward. So we had a very extensive engagement process resulting in this leadership profile report, recruiting to those characteristics. And the selection was Mr. Sean Woodward. He was in Washington for several years. He left the state to go to Idaho for a while and then is returning. And he's really just making a real difference in rebuilding trust, ensuring transparency. They were sorely lacking a strategic plan. And he personally launched that right away as part of his listening and learning tour, which was really a smart thing to do. And he's had experience. He's 11-year experience superintendent. So rather than have a third party come in and do the strategic plan, he certainly has facilitated that remarkably. And it was just approved a couple of weeks ago. And it's an incredible leadership move that he made and that the board has endorsed, and people are excited. They're rallying around, a shared vision for the first time in, a couple decades. So that's an exciting example that comes to mind right away.
Anything from our students before we? Okay. I did have one final question. Oh, Marnie, go ahead.
Oh, if there's time, I'm curious if you have either real numbers or a best guess about the average longevity of a superintendent in a role after being placed through your search process?
Yes, I don't have it off the top of my head, but we have that data. And it's like a 80 to 90% retention rate after 3 years. So I could get you the specifics on that. But we do have a good track record and a lot of years of data to prove that. So happy to follow up.
Thank you. That's sufficient for my curiosity at this stage. And if it's easy for you to email the data at a later date, that would be appreciated as well. Thank you.
Will do.
Okay. I have one final question. Hopefully it won't be too in-depth. We're a rural island district. I'm wondering if there are any specific difficulties that you foresee with the search out here, and if you have some ideas around how to get around those briefly.
Well, I think you're going to really attract a great pool of candidates. I truly believe you will. The size of district, your reputation, the location, the longevity and stability of leadership. People are looking for that when they decide whether to apply or not. So you have so many things going for you that I don't see real barriers. We understand that enrollment, people are going to be watching, and finance challenges are everywhere. But this will be a very attractive position, no doubt.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. McDuffie, for coming in and joining us and working through the technical difficulties on our end. Appreciate it very much, and look forward to seeing what the board and the community provide feedback on.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the
Have a good day.
opportunity. Bye-bye.
Christy, do we need to restart or something? So let's wait. But
So I do note that the folks from our next applicant are prepared for us already. I want to apologize. We're having some technical difficulties in getting with our speakers. So we'll get you started as quickly as we can. We'll bring you on board in just a moment, and we'll make sure you get your full time. So thank you for your patience. That's a positive sign. Would it be possible, Ms. Ford, if you would test our sound by just unmuting and saying something, please? Thank you.
Absolutely. Aloha, everyone.
Hello, thank you very much. Okay, we're getting everyone on board now. We got one more, I believe. Yep. Okay. So this would be the team from Ray and Associates, Dr. Chestnut, Mr. Lasso, Ms. Ford. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us and put together the proposal and come in for this virtually for this interview. I'll turn the floor over to y'all.
Thank you, President Williford, members of the board. Our team is very excited to be with you this afternoon, presenting this proposal to you. And it's good to be with you. Can you hear me okay? Okay, good.
Yes.
We greatly appreciate the work you do as board members. My sister actually is a school board member in the Peninsula School District in Gig Harbor, Washington. So I talk to Washington State School Board member on a regular basis. So after many years of being a superintendent, I have great appreciation for the work that you do. I know it's a labor of love, and our team has been very impressed with the work being done in South Whidbey. Looking at your website and reviewing your board meetings, it's very impressive school district. My name is Steve Chestnut. I've been working part-time with Ray & Associates for 4 years. I've been working, in 2020, I retired from the Scottsdale Unified School District in Scottsdale, Arizona as an executive assistant. I continued to live in Scottsdale. Prior to that, I was the superintendent in the Maricopa Unified School District in Maricopa, Arizona for 6 years. And prior to that, I was a superintendent in Washington State for 21 years in Dayton, Moses Lake, and Selah. And the grandkids still live in Issaquah, so Washington is still very near and dear to our hearts. I have a lot of experience working with districts of your size. I was superintendent in Dayton for 6 years with 800 students. I was a principal in County Benton City for 6 years with 1,400 students. I was a teacher in Kashmir where we had 1,600 students. And for Ray & Associates, I recently led a search in the Baltz Elementary School District in Phoenix with 2,200 students. That search was completed in 2022. Ray & Associates led the Granite Falls search in 2019 in Washington State, where Dr. Josh Middleton was hired, and he's retiring next month after 5 successful years. So a lot of good work done by Ray & Associates in Washington over the years. A lot of them have been in larger school districts. But Lieber, Richard, and I we just completed the North Thurston search with 15,000 students. That's not your size. However, we will be committed to recruiting candidates that will be a good match for South Whidbey. And we are very aware of the differences in school districts and experience in that way. Dr. Moshe and the South Whidbey School District has an excellent reputation. And with the search starting in September, you will attract excellent candidates. So we're really excited about the pool that we foresee will be applying for this position. Ray & Associates has excellent references, and you're welcome to contact those that are listed on page 30 of the proposal. I was the lead on 3 of the 4 searches that are listed on that page. The one search that I was not involved with was the Wichita, Kansas search, and I would be happy to provide additional references if you request them. It's always good to talk about costs up front. And as you can see in the proposal, it's on page 30. The cost of the search is a base fee of $17,000. You will want to spend an additional $1,200 on advertising. If you would like Libra, Richard, or myself in person, you would pay our travel expenses, and it could be 1, 2, or 3 of us. We are also happy to do a 100% virtual search with you at no additional expense. And working through searches during COVID in the last few years, we have a lot of experience doing 100% virtual searches where we as consultants are not on site. We can also be virtual half the time and in person half the time, like we were for the North Thurston search. So there's a lot of options that you have. The only other expense would be for finalist travel expenses. We recommend that the first round of interviews be done virtually, which saves travel expense, but of course you're going to want those final interviews in person. Our base fee also includes a professional third-party criminal, civil litigation, Social Security, and motor vehicle record check and verification of educational degrees for the top 3 candidates. Also, community survey, staff survey, parent survey, student survey is a very important part of our profile development. And if you decide that you want that community survey to be in other languages, there is no additional fee for that. Our placement guarantee is this: if the superintendent departs from the position during the first year under any circumstances, or within 2 years, if a majority of the board is still in place and the departure is due to dissatisfaction and not health-related matters, personal or familial reasons, Rain Associates will recruit new candidates for the board at no additional cost, barring travel, advertising, and due diligence expenses. So we have a lot of other information to share, and I will now ask Richard to introduce himself.
Well, good evening, members of the board. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Richard Lasso. I am a regional search associate with Ray & Associates. However, my full-time job is as an assistant superintendent for equity and instructional leadership in the Puyallup School District. My family is originally from Colombia. I grew up in a military family. I've been in Washington since right about middle school. My dad retired over at what used to be Fort Lewis, now JBLM. And I'm a product of Flower Park High School. I've been to the colleges here. I've worked as a teacher, as a counselor, and as a district administrator, as well as an elementary principal and high school principal, mostly in the Pierce County region. And I'm excited to be doing potentially my second search with Ray & Associates. I'll pass it on to my colleague, Libra.
Aloha, everyone. Libra Ford here. I am a regional associate also with Ray & Associates. And I'm excited to be here because I bring a different lens to the group. I was a former board chair here in Oregon, North Clackamas, during the pandemic. And I've also served as a board member for years. And we hired Ray & Associates years ago to hire our superintendent that we currently have. And after that experience, I decided to get involved and help boards from the board lens in this process. I'm also currently a full-time philanthropist. We focus on women and girl programs here in Oregon, and I sit on the state education board for Oregon now, as well as I'm a commissioner for our legislative process. I've started schools across the world, in particular in Hawaii. I started the first hybrid school in Hawaii, where I was associated with the military, and that's how we landed in Oregon after a nice career in the military. So lots of experience in the education side from a different lens, as a parent, as a volunteer, and also as a board member, and now as a state board member. So excited to bring that lens to this experience as board members. That is what I get excited to talk about, what my experience was and how I can help guide through that process. We also have an alternative person, just in case any of us are not available. So you always will have at least 3 of us, and that is Dr. David Fultis, and he's excellent. At this time, he won't be a part of it, and that's why he's not here, but we want you to know that we always keep alternatives available so that we can keep your experience consistent. Next slide. So this process, this is your process. This is your vision and your mission. We're here to just provide supports and guidance based on our experiences and our wealth of knowledge in this world of searching for a superintendent, which is a really important responsibility of the school board. But we want you to know this is about what you need, what your community needs, and how you need it. And so even though we have experience, you guys are experts too. And so together we feel that your vision and your mission will be coming to light as you select this individual. Next slide.
Thank you, Libra. And so as Libra mentioned, we do make this really centered on the needs, the vision of the school district, but we also have some really important core values that are at the heart of our association. So since 1975, we specialize in executive leadership searches, which we've consistently demonstrated our commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion, starting with not just our ownership, but really the makeup of our leadership structure, which is right around 40% either women or people of color. In our most recent search in North Thurston, for instance, the initial applicant pool was comprised of 1/3 candidates of color, 1/3 women, and we were able to kind of keep that percentage all the way through the semifinal, all the way down to the finalists at each stage. And beyond the standard marketing efforts that you would likely experience, posting on certain websites and that, I think one of the things that's unique about us, because of how Libra mentioned, we're kind of in 3 different places, right? A retired superintendent, an active assistant superintendent, and then Libra, who sat on a board and is in a different state. We actively utilize our extensive local and regional professional networks to really make sure that we're attracting diverse and high caliber applicants. And again, just a little bit more on our commitment here. As you see on the slide, DEI is something that we've seen Southwood in the school district is extremely committed to, and we both respect and commend you for that, and we want to be supportive of those efforts. So with our longstanding commitment to diversity, we want to ensure that we engage deeply with your district stakeholders early on, that we really front load at the beginning. What does DEI mean for you all? Because we kind of use that term a little bit, and we assume we all have the same definition of that. But sometimes you might be looking for something really specific, and we want to make sure we honor that as we go through the search. So we're very intentional about spending a lot of time up front, making sure we understand your needs, your vision, and then starting to go off the recruiting efforts based off of that.
So as Richard and Libra mentioned, we believe very much in board involvement. We know this is your search, and we really start the process with board input. And I think the best way to visualize our process is to look on page 5 of the proposal. There's a 1-page draft tentative calendar that shows the 5 stages that we go through in a search. And stage 1 is the board input stage. And there's several parts to that. The first important part is to finalize that timeline based on your needs. We'll finalize that timeline with your input. It's a very important document, of course. We also start with board one-on-one interviews. So Libra, Richard, or I will interview each of you over the phone to listen to you and make sure we understand where you are coming from as a board member, because the 5 of you have to make this decision on hiring the new superintendent. We also will remind you to start thinking about the candidate compensation and what will be in that contract, because that's an important recruiting tool. And so you'll want to be thinking about that early on, and we will need to get that information from you about 1 month after we start, as we start to roll out the promotional materials for this position. But once again, we work closely with you to make sure a search that you are pleased with from the very beginning.
And so to get more specific, our district profile development is where your work will begin to really come through and how we experience the search. I first want to say, before I explain this profile, which is a pretty amazing tool to use, as a board member that has used this tool, approaching this moment can be daunting. And there's a lot of things that you're thinking about, and there's a lot of things that you don't know and you've never done before. And so I want you to know that this tool is excellent because it really allows you to go through the process in a way where you feel informed and you also feel like you're a part of it. And a big part of your mission is collaboration. And this is where our collaboration really is shown in its shines. So the profile includes, like Steve was saying, the interviews with you guys where we each will talk to you guys individually. We have the same questions, and then we bring that together and we discuss that. We also have virtual and in-person discussions with all of your stakeholders, and we do that in the best way for all of those individuals. So that would be your cabinet, that would be anyone from the community that you think we need to talk to, all types of staff at every level to make sure that we hear their voices. And then we, of course, will bring all that together to obtain an assessment where we can see what is your community, what are your stakeholders looking for, and how do we get that in a written form so that you have a guiding tool to really understand the profile that you're looking for. Next slide. And then this also will help us in our recruitment process, right? Because now we have common language and a tool that leads us to understand what the recruitment should look for. But our recruitment is not passive. Of course, it'll be posted in areas so people can find it on their own, and it's transparent in many ways. But we aggressively recruit people that we feel might be a good fit for your community. So we don't lean back in this process, we lean in and make sure that you're getting a nice pool of people to choose from, and you're not like having a limited skeletal list and then you have to pick from a list that maybe you're not happy with. We're going to make you look at this list and say, wow, this is a hard decision. These are a lot of great candidates, and that's a really good problem to have. So we're going to help you to get to that problem in the recruitment stage. Next slide. And of course, the candidate pool will, we'll screen them and make sure that they're exactly according to what the stakeholders and you have all decided, right? Like there's no surprises, there's no like nuances that'll show up and you're like, hey, we never talked about that. Everything will be transparent. You'll be really clear where we are on the stage. But the candidate pool will also have an extensive background check for which we do ourselves, and we call everyone and make sure we have the questions that we have answered, so you can be confident about that candidate pool as you're making your decision in this process.
And that leads us to the board selection of candidates. So with our team, as kind of we mentioned earlier, we really want to come alongside and make sure that we support you in your conversations and in your dialogue. In the North Thurston search, one of the conversations we had was around the halo effect and looking at kind of implicit bias. And there was some concern about how we might be introducing that, or how our conversations or some of the things that we were saying might not have reflected a really conscious awareness. And so we spent some time with that. We actually put together a document with some things for the board to consider. And we found that to be really helpful. And we think that that's probably our biggest strength is when we get to the point where we're selecting candidates. Yes, it's your decision, your conversation, and we're there to kind of support you and guide you and just kind of offer a different perspective as you go through and make the best choice. And then the last thing really that I would highlight that I think is also unique to us is we have a consensus building matrix, which is fairly unique to our Ray and Associates. We've been using it for a really long time. And part of it is to kind of allow each voice at the table to kind of be heard individually, equally first before we engage in a conversation. And we've gotten really positive feedback on using that tool to kind of initiate a conversation and making sure that there's not one voice or a couple voices that dominate the space. And that concludes our presentations. We are happy to take any questions that the board might have.
So first off, Mr. Lasso, I would like to say it's always wonderful to see a fellow SMU graduate, so I don't see too many up here. So thank you. Go Saints.
Yeah.
The question I have for you all is, as you conducted your initial research on South Whitby School District in preparation for your proposal and for this interview, what 3 things stood out to you about South Whitby, and how would that then influence your recruitment efforts of candidates?
Well, I'll go first. One thing that has impressed me is the involvement of student voice. Watching some of your board meetings, I know you have 2 student representatives, and it's impressive the way they sit at the dais with everyone else. It's impressive that they are asked to give advisory votes on motions, and student voice is important. And we incorporate that in our stakeholder groups, and we want to listen to students. We don't go down to the primary grades, but middle and high school, they have a lot to say, and we like to listen to them, and that's an important part of the process. That's one thing.
I'll jump in. I think I have 2 things that I think are just amazing and exciting to watch. The first is just the visual. I think the way that you guys record your meetings is really powerful by including the audience. A lot of school districts do not do that. And so it's really difficult to see what's going on and who's really there, where this allows you to see engagement, which is a part of your mission to be collaborative and community engaged. So I appreciate that visual coming from a school district. I know it can be done many different ways. So that is, I think, really important. And then the second thing I think is your commitment to diversity. I think that it's an amazing thing. And any school district that does that and stands on it and everything that they do, not just in word, but also in policy, I think is an excellent trait.
And I would echo 2 of those things. I'm a huge proponent of student voice. We started with student reps on our board 2 years ago, and it's been transformational. So I would echo that. And I would say your commitment to community. I mean, I think sometimes it's the small details, but it's in your vision. It's the one word that's in your vision and in your mission. And I won't pretend to know too much, but from what I do know, it seems like it's a genuine commitment to community engagement, which I'm a big proponent of.
Thank you. And how would that influence your recruitment efforts?
I think one of the first questions we get when we recruit candidates, because we get a lot of questions, a lot of phone calls, people that are interested, thinking about applying, they'll ask, what's the culture like in the district? What's the school board like? And as Richard said, I don't pretend to know everything about your board. I don't. But just in watching board meetings, the civility, the way you handle your business, the commitments you have on your website that you will demonstrate and live up to. Very impressive parts of your culture. And the reputation of the district, of course, is outstanding. And those are the kind of questions that we get.
And I'll also add that I think it's important that we represent who you are. And so in watching and understanding what you guys are doing and what you want, that we walk with that same understanding and deliver that to the community in the way that you feel represents you. So I think that is also how it will show up. The more we understand, the more we get to know you guys will show up as an extension of you.
And I think the most practical way that would show up, it would be in the questions that we start to ask and what we're looking for in responses from the candidates, right? We want to make sure we highlight whether it's the things that we noted or the other things that you all noted in terms of that. That's how it would inform our search.
Thank you for all that. Related, a couple of you mentioned some small school district opportunities that you had in the past. What is it that your firm could bring as a unique approach to working with a small rural school district?
Well, for example, I've done a lot of work in Washington. Obviously, I continue to have good contacts there. I have worked closely with ESDs in Eastern Washington, for example. Many small districts involved in those ESDs. I have good connections with the ESD superintendents. That's a wonderful network that I've utilized in the past to get the word out to educational leaders that really know excellent small school superintendents or people that are interested in that kind of environment. And that's one resource that I will call upon to make sure that we get some high quality candidates.
I also think something that's unique to our group is something that I personally will bring, which is my experience with a rural school district, which is where I was a chair, as well as when I first came to Oregon, I worked within a school district that had 3 students in rural Oregon. And so it is a unique experience. There's unique needs there. And I think that having that experience in an area that, I will be more than happy to contribute that in not just in experience, but in my word and also what we do. And I think we come as a team, but 3 students is pretty intense for a rural area. And so there's a lot that I've learned from that experience that I'd be more than happy to make sure we utilize in this one.
Not too often you hear about a district that has more kids than Index. So
Yeah.
Well, I guess they don't have to worry about class sizes.
No.
I have a few questions, and I won't necessarily ask them all at once in case other board members have questions. But can I start by asking what steps you take to protect confidentiality of applicants through this process?
Sure, I'll be happy to answer that. We work hard at that. That's always a question we get from candidates, and we work with the board and district staff to make sure that it remains confidential. So we ask each board member and anybody that's going to be looking at information, it could be an executive assistant or the HR director, to sign a confidentiality agreement. And then we make a commitment to our candidates that we're not going to release names until finalist interviews. That's a very important thing to candidates and something we work hard at.
Thank you. I'll ask another question. Thank you. I'm wondering if you can speak to either real numbers or a best guess about the typical longevity of superintendents in roles where you've helped place them through your search process.
Well, I've been with Ray and Associates the longest, so I'm sorry to keep going first. But prior to COVID, nationally, we had an average of 6.5 to 7 years. Now that average has dropped off a little bit after COVID, a lot of replacements and that kind of thing. But yes, we've had very good success with the placements that I've done over the last 4 years. Josh Middleton in Granite Falls is a good example being there for 5 years. I don't know if Labor, do you have any other examples?
Well, the school district that we hired Ray and Associates for, we did that during COVID. And so it's been 4 years and she's still there and going strong. I will also say that we provide a guarantee that we will not come for one of the superintendents that we've placed. So if that movement happens, it's not going to happen because we are recruiting them. That is not something that we will do.
That does count for a lot. Thank you so much. My final question relates to the selection of finalist candidates or semifinalist candidates. How much board involvement do you allow at the screening stage if the board wants to participate?
Go ahead, Libra. I know you know the answer to that one.
This is your search. So the screening process is your process. We provide suggestions, we provide information, so you can make an informed decision, but the screening process is your process. And so you get to choose.
Thank you.
I have a question for you. Once selected for superintendent, does Ray and Associates help with that transition and support that individual? I'm thinking in particular, if the district is lucky enough to select a candidate that may not necessarily have a peer group in the area, how might Ray and Associates help that person find footing in our district?
I'll answer that one. That's an important question because all new superintendents, whether they're from in-state or out of state, they need support. And I was president of the Washington Association of School Administrators. I still have close connections with all the leadership in that organization. And so that's a very important group for new superintendents to be plugged into. And I'd be happy to, work on that and make sure that that happened. As I mentioned, I have good connection with ESD superintendents in Western Washington as well. And that's another wonderful resource to get connected with a new superintendent. And those are two things that I would happily work on with a new superintendent.
I guess what I'm really trying to get at, maybe a little bit more direct, would help. If we get a candidate that's not middle class white, if we get a person of color, if we get a person who's gay, if we get a person who maybe doesn't fit the demographic but is a good fit because this board selects that person, do you come up alongside them and help, or do you do something? I mean, again, WAS is a great resource. I'm not saying they're not, but how would you help that person? How would you help the board be ready to accept that person into the fold and help them be successful? That's really what I'm looking for, because this board is really committed to DEI. And if they are successful in their pursuit, how do we make sure that they can support the person they hire?
I'll jump in. So this process is very personalized. And so you'll find that one of us we'll all be talking to you guys all the time, and we'll all be talking to the candidates all the time. But there's relationships that are built that are a little stronger than others. And so if a candidate is connected to one of us, or board members connected to one of us in that advanced way, it doesn't stop just because the search has stopped. And a perfect example is North Thurston. They still call. There's one board member who I connected to strongly, and we still talk. And I would say probably twice a week. And so there's nothing to say that this will stop. I think we're all professionals in this world, but more importantly, we're passionate about this world of education. It is important that students have leaders that are not just showing up because they have the expertise, but they feel whole in their role, because that means a student can be successful. And so I think we're all, and I don't want to speak for everyone, but I will, because I know them enough to know, we're all strongly committed to that. So whatever that needs to look like, that's what we're going to do. We're going to show up, midnight phone calls, we're going to pick up, and we're going to have those tough conversations with board members and candidates. And it happens that way all the time. We use our personal cell phones for this. So they, at any time, people can just call us and we answer, because we know that they're calling for a reason.
Is there anything in particular from the students? No. Any other questions from the leadership team? I just wanted to, you addressed some of the benefits of this district. I was curious if there's any concerns you might have for whether it's being out on an island or anything else for finding a good match.
You know, honestly, I lived in Washington for 55 years, and I mostly live in Eastern Washington, but have wonderful memories of any time spent on Whidbey Island. I think that it is such a wonderful place to live. I think that, and work, I think that you will have no problem finding candidates. I honestly don't think there's a downside. Obviously, someone interested in a larger district would not apply. But other than that, I think you're going to be in good shape.
Thank you very much.
I will say, I think that you probably will have some candidates who may hesitate because there is an assumption on smaller school districts, on rural school districts. And that's something that we as consultants can help with, to make sure you have a nice, diverse pool of candidates. And me in particular, and I know also with Richard, us being people of color, we know how to speak to people in that way. We know how to encourage them, as well as help them understand what they need to look for to feel safe and comfortable. And the other side is, maybe if we hear something from you guys, making sure we say to you guys, hey, you might want to articulate that to them so they can feel that they're in a space that is welcoming to them. But personally, as a person that lived in Hawaii for 15 years, if you want island life and you know that this is an island, you will apply. And I think you guys will be just fine.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. I appreciate you adding that. And I would just encourage your firm, if should we choose to move forward with you, to really do some extensive research around just some community events and some newspaper articles around some things that South Whitby has navigated about 4 or 5 years ago now. Because I do think it would be important for potential candidates to be aware of some of the challenges we're talking about.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time to come and present virtually. Thank you for the strong presentation and for answering our questions. We will be getting feedback from the board itself and also from our community over the next almost month, and we'll get back to you once we've made a decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to our third and final applicant tonight. Let me know when it's all set.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time out to do so. Welcome to the South Whitby School Board meeting. I'll
Thank
pass it off to
you. Thank you. Let's see here. I think I have another colleague who needs to be promoted to speaker. Is Eliana on the call? Ah, there she is. Perfect. And do I have permission to share my screen? Let's see.
Yes, you do.
All right. Thank you so much. Well, my name is Sylvia Flowers, and I am the Managing Director of Talent Acquisition and Executive Search for Alma Advisory Group. And I have my colleague, Eliana, on the line, who will also introduce herself.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. Eliana Pereira, and I'm the Chief of Staff with Alma Advisory Group. Great to be here this evening.
All right. So remind us how much time we have for presentation and then questions so I can set myself a timer.
15 minutes for the presentation and 5 to 10 for the questions that follow. Yes. 10.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, want to give you a brief overview of our firm. As I mentioned, my name is Sylvia Flowers, and just to share a little bit about Alma Advisory Group, we were founded 8 years ago this fall, and our mission is to cultivate the conditions where people can do their best work on behalf of the students they serve. And we specifically chose the name Alma because in Latin, it means to foster. And what we seek to do is really to foster this work together with our clients, because we do believe that the people closest to the issue should be involved at every stage of the decision-making process. And for us, our work really started in working in human resources, talent management, and organizational effectiveness, working with schools and districts on how they can best recruit and retain teachers and leaders. And out of that work, our executive search practice was born. So here you see our CEO, Monica Santana Rosen, who sends her greetings tonight, but had a prior engagement. Eliana is actually a founding team member / boomeranger who has recently rejoined the organization. How long has it been, Eliana? A year?
It's been a year. It's officially a year.
It's been a year. So a year back from joining back in 2016. And I have been with Alma for 4 years. Want to give you an overview of the team that would be dedicated to this search. You see me and Eliana there. We also have Sydney Capote, who is one of our experts in community engagement and facilitation. He has worked very closely with Indigenous communities on trauma-informed and diversity and equity and inclusion work. So he is one of our skilled facilitators in working with communities on our community engagement portion of our search work. Also have Venus Velez, Nita Lasapunko, and Naja Thompson. Naja is our recruiter. He's the one who will be pounding the pavement, finding great candidates for your for this position. Nita Lasapunko does a lot of the behind the scenes data analysis, analyzing feedback, not only the feedback on the front end of the engagement, but also feedback along each stage of the interview process. And then Venus Velez does a little bit of the community engagement work, as well as some of our business and back office management pieces. This search, if we were selected, would be led by me, supported project oversight by Monica, of course, and then Eliana sort of managing multiple projects and making sure that our staffing is up to par in order to serve our clients well. What you can expect from us, we think there's 4 key components of our process that make ALMA unique. First, we believe deeply in that authentic community voice and transparency. And so we want to work really closely with the board to design a process that ensures that people have the opportunity to provide input at every stage of the process. We also want to design a process that brings in anti-racist practices and focuses on designing a process that mitigates bias by focusing in on the competencies for the role. And we really believe in a competency-based process. We have found that when you are very, very clear on the skills and competencies that you're looking for, then you can mitigate bias by continuing to come back to the evidence that's demonstrated in the selection process, as opposed to subjective criteria. And so we do bring a lot of training and facilitation on our anti-bias work. We do have a track record of bringing a very diverse candidate pool to our searches. So that's something you can count on, is Naja and the team really pounding the pavement. Again, we have, well, at least I have a motto. I don't know if they've adopted it, but it's always be sourcing. So we're always sourcing for good candidates. That's something that we don't stop sourcing until we're clear that you have your candidate in the pool. And then lastly, we bring expert facilitation, really to ensure that the board can come together in their decision-making. As I mentioned, the diversity of our talent pool in the districts, nonprofits, and charter management organizations that we worked in. Again, you see some of the statistics here. We, of course, shared those in our proposal as well, so I won't spend time going through those. But in our interview processes, we start that any interviewer goes through our anti-bias training, and then we really focus on what is the evidence that's tied to the competencies, and how do we sort of control for, as best we can, the bias that we all bring to the table. In terms of the community engagement, the first part of this project is really getting to know your community. We really want to make sure that we have created as many opportunities as possible for the stakeholders and community members to provide input on what is most important in this next superintendent, and what are some of the what are some of the successes that we can share about the district, and what are some of the big rocks or the big areas of opportunity that the board and community see on the horizon, so that we can paint a picture of what it will be like to lead this district. All of that foundational work really drives the development of the job profile and the competencies that we'll begin to screen for at every stage of the process. That also, some of the ways that we do engage the community can include surveys. It can be on-site listening sessions, focus groups, and one-on-one interviews with your community. Eliana and Monica are fully bilingual and biliterate, so if that is a need, we can certainly provide monolingual Spanish translation, in person, virtually, and of course, in any written form. We have done nearly 100 executive searches across the country, cabinet level roles in CMOs, education nonprofit organizations, and traditional school districts. This is our overview of our superintendent searches that we've led to date. So our first superintendent search was in the 2020-2021 school year with Denver Public Schools. And we are in process right now with Durham Public Schools in North Carolina and Homewood Flossmoor High School District in the south suburbs of Illinois, Chicago, Illinois, which is about a 3,000 student, one high school district. Pause there so you can just see an overview. In terms of West Coast searches, Eugene, Oregon would be our West Coast superintendent search that we've led to date. So, of course, we did a little bit of research on your district. Excited by the idea of working on in this island. We have seen, well, of course, we noted just the strong performance in terms of graduation rate, the very interesting mix of school districts on the island. So interested to see that in person. And of course, your commitment to this multicultural and literate education that you want all students to achieve as a result of going through your school district. And before I turn it over to you all for questions, just want to highlight, what we believe makes Alma Advisory Group special. I think we first, again, want to be your trusted advisor and your trusted partner at every stage of this process, and want to work with you to facilitate a collaborative decision-making process that is grounded in the competencies for the role. Of course, we know that what a superintendent does, but what that looks like in your district is something that we want to really paint a true picture of. What are the needs of your community? What does the community want? What is the board looking for? And how do we make sense of all of these diverse opinions in order to design a process that meets your needs? And I think that's the customization of our approach. And we will come back to that and through the interview process and the tools and resources that are developed to support this search. I think, we recognize as an organization that we all have bias. And so we want to create the same foundation for every member of the interview team, whether those are students, teachers, leaders, board members. We commit to delivering that foundational training to anyone who is participating in the interview process. And then we co-create and co-design the interview activities with those stakeholders. And then again, we hope to design in partnership with the board, a transparent and inclusive and authentic search process that engages the community. And lastly, our candidate identification and recruitment process all ties back to that job profile. What have we decided are the skills and competencies are needed? What is the story of your district that we want to tell to potential candidates? And then how do we go and identify not only active job seekers, but passive job seekers? There are people who may or may not be looking for this opportunity, and that's what we do. We go out and find candidates who may or may not be looking for this opportunity. We, of course, use an applicant tracking system to keep track of the stages of the process. And then we, leverage all the tools at our disposal, including casting a wide net using job boards and other sites, and doing, of course, extensive connections through our network, and creating communication and social media posts for you all to launch, to support the search and to identify any referrals or potential candidates that you want us to follow up with as well. Eliana, anything that I have forgotten before we turn it over to Q&A?
No, you got just about everything. And I definitely want to make sure that we honor the time. So happy to answer any questions that you all have about working and partnering with Alma Advisory Group. And happy to answer any questions that you all may have for us.
I was wondering if you had any experience with student voices, incorporating that into your work with stuff. And if so, how has that been carried out?
Thank you so much for that question. That's one of our favorite parts of this work. So one of the things that we ensure that we integrate, not just on the beginning stages of the process, but at any stage in the process, is really thinking through how do we ensure that we're getting the perspectives of students. So that's one of the first groups we try and organize. And there are many complexities, as you know, in navigating busy student schedules, transportation, but whatever it is, our team prioritizes going out to schools so that we can listen to students, and not just the students on like the Superintendent's Advisory Council, who are amazing leaders, but are often the voices that are most represented. We want to hear from students who are in the alternative programs, ensuring we're hearing from your multi-language learners. We're hearing from, students who are recent arrivals to the country. And so we really take the time to identify ways for our team to either go out or to meet virtually with students as well as part of that community engagement process. We've started to also start reporting on just specifically what we've heard from students and compare that data to what we've heard from the adults in the districts, which has been really powerful way to turn a mirror into the work. And so that's a practice we've been very excited about and would be thrilled to continue. We've also ensured that we're including students as part of any interview panels. So if selected, Alma has developed what we like to call a very radically inclusive finalist stage, where we like to invite as many perspectives and viewpoints from the community to meet candidates. And it's a great way for the community to meet their potential new leader, but it's also a really fantastic way for candidates to hear directly from different community members. And one of our favorite panels is the student interview panel, who again would go through our interview training process, receive our anti-bias training. They are the most critical and open as well, and really push our thinking. So that has always been just a highlight of our work. But students are really central and key to the work that we do. And again, I appreciate your question. Sylvia, anything else I may have missed with that one?
No, I would just say that the students always design the best questions. They know what they want, they tell the truth, and they give great feedback. And anyone who's a parent knows they are truth tellers.
Thank you.
I'm curious,
you.
you mentioned a referral-based aspect of the recruitment process, but in terms of the more standard channels, how do you think your recruitment strategies would hold up in a small rural West Coast community?
Yeah, so what we'd want to do, of course, is research the area. We would have, of course, national posting sites, but then we'd also develop a list of regional and local posting sites that we think target the Pacific Northwest community and folks who would be in and around your area. In terms of our network and referrals, we're also combing through our personal and professional networks and asking those folks for referrals. I will say our team collectively has hundreds of years in education across the country, having worked in a variety of district contexts. And so we ourselves know many educators across the country and would begin calling personally to potentially solicit referrals through that way as well. So one, we're going to use the traditional job boards that we all know about. Two, we're going to identify a network of regional and local job boards that may be more targeted to your geographic region. And then third, we're going to use our network to personally contact people who are connected to other educators, aspiring superintendents, current superintendents, and other cabinet level leaders across the country who may be ready for their next opportunity to lead a district of this size and scope.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Will you please tell us about a superintendent placement you've done that you're particularly proud of because of the performance of the superintendent post-placement?
Okay, let me think about that. So one that I am going to highlight is Evanston Township High School District. It is a one high school district north of Chicago, Evanston, Illinois, where Northwestern University is. I would say what makes this one unique and the reason we are calling attention to it is because this was actually a case where the board was believed that they had an internal candidate in mind for the job. And so they were weighing the decision of whether to do a national search or not. They had a superintendent who was stepping down, who had a number of years in the district, and then they had an internal candidate who they thought was ready for the position, but they weren't quite sure. And so we were able to modify our approach. We still did extensive community input and stakeholder engagement on the front end to get that clarity on what the community saw as the greatest needs for the district, and then also what the community wanted in their next superintendent in order to inform the job profile. From there, we worked with the board, and I think what's unique about this was really that facilitated decision-making that Alma was able to guide the board through. The board ultimately decided not to do a national search, but to allow the community to interview the internal candidate against those competencies using the same anti-bias training, designing a competency-based interview process, reviewing all of the feedback from those interviews. Ultimately, based on that feedback, the board decided to hire the internal candidate. And in that decision and selection, the board, which was an all-female board, they've got these 7 members. They all wore these t-shirts that said Team of 8, and they hired their African-American male superintendent as the 8th team member. And so it was a really special moment of, I think, unity and connection and just that commitment to the internal development and promotion of a candidate that they knew. So I point that out specifically to highlight the community engagement, which was important, and then the board's really thoughtful and facilitated decision-making to get to that decision. I would say the other unique circumstance, and that was in 2022. I would say the other one is we're in year 2, I think year 1, year 2 of this superintendent's candidacy. As you know, our first superintendent search was in 2020, 2021. So many of our superintendents are still in place because it's only been 3 to 4 years. The other one I point to is Cleveland Metropolitan School District. Cleveland is very unique in that they have mayoral control of the school district. They have an appointed board through the mayor's, through a nominating process. And so we worked very closely with that appointed board, the mayor's chief of education, to design a process to recruit and select the superintendent to replace a long-standing superintendent who had been with the district for over 25 years and been in as superintendent for over 10 years, a renowned leader in education. And through that process, the board narrowed to 2 finalists, an African-American male and a Latinx male, both with connections to Cleveland, although neither were working in Cleveland at the time, who came back to the community. 2 finalists. Ultimately, Dr. Warren Morgan was selected as the superintendent of Cleveland Metropolitan School District. We then were able to subsequently work with Dr. Morgan as he's built his leadership team and cabinet. So we continue to work with him as a leader in helping him build his team in this school year as well.
Can I ask a clarifying question about the example you used prior where they went with an internal candidate? One thing that the board is looking at in particular is we are a very financially sound district. We're one of the few in our region. So to give you some perspective, out of the 35 school districts in our region, 28 are on a financial watch list, and we are one of the only ones in our region who are not. But that has brought a lot of concern in the community around how schools are using funds. How did you, as a company and as an organization, navigate with the board in that situation where they did end up going with an internal candidate, and a constituent could say, why did we hire a firm if we ended up going with the same person anyways? What guidance might you offer to us should we move forward with you and maybe our candidate is just a couple districts away?
So I think you said a couple of things there. In the case I shared with you, the internal candidate was a current employee of the district, not in a neighboring district. So there was not a recruitment aspect to our search. I think once we got into discussions with the board on the contract, then we were able to tier and break down our services to allow for some changes in approach. So obviously we've given you a fixed fee contract, really wanting to understand the context by which you want to work through. We would be happy to entertain that if you want to get more specific about where you think the search is going.
I think just to clarify, I thought your proposal was well developed. I mean, it's very clear that you have the expertise in this field. I think that's good to know that there's an opportunity for a conversation if we felt like there was a different approach we wanted to take. If we move forward with your proposal as it stood, though, I think the question I would ask is, like, how do you feel like in searches that you have done where you did do recruitment, but there maybe wasn't, the candidate didn't come from out of state, or they didn't come from, just some diamond in the rough that your network just happened to pull out of thin air, right? Like, we all know those situations where we love that. But if they were just a couple districts away, how does your community engagement help support so that the community still finds value in what you're offering? I guess is more what I'm asking. And usually Marian
Yeah.
helps me out when I muddle my words to provide clarity on what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, so I think, our fees are based on the time and effort that we put into each and every search. The community engagement portion of the process is pretty hands-on and labor intensive, meaning we are on site for multiple days, really spending 10 to 14 hours with your community. We're designing that, of course, with you and figuring out what are the best and most cost-effective ways to leverage that. I think, if you are making a decision on an internal or external search, that could lead to some redesign of the proposal. I think in terms of our recruitment efforts, if we are recruiting regionally, nationally, the effort to do that and bring you a candidate pool that meets the criteria, we feel like that time and effort is still there, even if you all ultimately select somebody who may be local. I will tell you, it's very interesting, and Eliana, jump in. I know you're coming off of a site visit. I'm coming off of a site visit. We hear over and over again, we want someone who understands us, who knows us. We are unique, we are special. We want someone who's going to be here for a long time and become a part of the community. That is a consistent, I mean, I'm not going to say 100%. Sometimes people are looking for something new, but there is often a desire for someone who is going to commit to becoming part of the fabric of the community. And sometimes that means that we're recruiting someone to come back home. Maybe they're not home, but they want to come back to the area. And maybe that means somebody is fairly close and needs to be tapped on the shoulder that this opportunity arises. So I think you had asked about the community feeling like their voices were heard. We'd obviously want to know, what do people think before we design something that doesn't meet what the community wants.
And I think just to add to that, I think at every step of the way, working with, your communications team as well to help develop the messaging and to continue to provide the community with updates throughout this process so they see the value in the services, whether the search goes, internally or not, but to continuously assess what are the stories we need to share about what we're learning, how as a team you all are building capacity and alignment around those core competencies that you're looking for in a leader. I think it's also important, and then how the community engages around that process as well could also help build that inclusive feeling and sentiment that we're working together to really understand where are we as a district, as a community now, and developing that profile of a leader that will help get us through this next transition and into this next phase of our journey together. But I think the communication strategy is something that's really important It's a really important part of the process to ensure that people continue to see the value in that investment throughout the search, not just in the beginning where we're wanting to hear the feedback, but as we go throughout when we do our extensive community engagement report out, which is done publicly at a board meeting, ensuring that like we'll share the feedback back with students directly as well, so they see that in different pockets of the community. So that's, I think, going to be an important part of this, and I think we've seen great just appreciation for that in the searches that we've supported.
Can you describe the anti-racist training, the length of time, the number of groups? Because that's all part of your price point as well, which I think is, it could be really beneficial. So what does that look like in terms of a time commitment?
Yeah, so first and foremost, we'd want to do that with the board. And we want to do it with the board first, because the board is typically the first interview group after the ALMA team interviews candidates. And for the board, we would want to spend anywhere from 2 to 3 hours kind of coming up with our shared mission and our shared goal and our shared purpose in working together. So we want to have that shared agreement between ALMA and the board on what it is we want to accomplish through our work together. Then we want to spend time with our anti-racist, our anti-bias training. It typically is about 1.5 hours. We'll take more time if you give it to us, but we know that you all have a lot of business to do. We'll take 2 hours at minimum. We really want more, but this is a time-intensive process for board members, an important one among all the other things that you have to do. And then for each, and to the second part of your question, if through our design process, we decide we want to have 3 interview panels, 4 interview panels, we've had as many as 9 interview panels. The ALMA team is training each panel individually. So if you have 9 interview panels, we're doing 2 trainings per panel. An hour and a half of anti-bias training, another hour to finalize their interview questions and prep them for the interviews. So that's a bit about how that looks. The training itself is, of course, our proprietary design. We do some activities where we want to create at least an environment where leaders can talk about their biases openly. They can create the space where they can name biases and then set those aside and focus on the competencies. And also it helps in our debrief when we've had that grounding. And then we are all listening for what may sound like evidence or what may not sound like evidence, what may sound like a I feel statement versus, well, what did the candidate actually say or do? Thank you for that question.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate the time that you spent putting the proposal together and coming to join us here and present and answer questions. Really appreciate the look into the district that you had also. We will be starting this process. We're starting this process now. We'll be looking to get community feedback and have some discussion among the board until our second meeting in June, at which point we'll get in contact with y'all.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And if you have any questions before that next meeting, please reach out to me or Eliana. We're happy to get you a response or make any adjustments based on some of your own internal conversations about what you might, how you might want to customize your approach.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
All right, good night.
Thank you. Good night.
We will now be taking a 25-minute recess and come back at 6:30 for our regularly scheduled business meeting. School district school board back from recess. We will begin with just a brief overview of how public comment will work tonight and at every business meeting. If you would like to make public comment, please sign up in the back with Ms. Macaro. You will have 5 minutes to make your comment. You will generally not get a direct response from the board. These are our opportunities to hear what you have to say, not to engage in a back and forth discussion. Please do remember that we have policy 0002, which is our professional communications policy, which we worked with staff and other stakeholders this past year to create, that talks about how we can engage in discussion or commentary while respecting the dignity of all of those involved. If you are on Zoom at the moment and would like to make a comment during public comment, we do have 15 folks online at the moment. If you'd like to make a comment, please type your name and location into the Q&A function, and then and then you can start typing up the comment that you'd like to make. I will read it during the public comment phase, generally after the in-person comments are made. That's all I've got for you on that. We will have an executive session following this meeting to review the performance of a public employee and discuss negotiations on the performance of a publicly bid contract, as is laid out in the revised Code of Washington. I will now turn this over to Director Jackson for the land acknowledgement.
Thank you. We have a written land acknowledgement, but I like to extemporaneize because it feels more true to the reason for sharing a land acknowledgement, which is to be mindful of the Indigenous history of this place and to learn from the opportunities to work with ancestral, present, and future people of all identities and cultures to be in integrity with this land and its people. South Whidbey is on Snohomish land. This island, once known as Chakolchi, has been a significant place for peoples of the Lower Skagit, the Tulalip, the Swinomish, the Snohomish, the Stillaguamish, and the Suquamish, including the tribes collectively affiliated with the Tulalip tribes, many of whom moved from this island at the time of the signing of the Treaty of Point Elliott in 1855. We acknowledge the significant history of this land and its Indigenous peoples going back uncountable generations and their presence here today. And we honor their ties to the land, the water, the human and non-human peoples of this place, and their stewardship over generations. I was fortunate enough to attend, along with Ms. Macaro, an amazing event last week. It was a convening of school directors and tribal leaders. We were hosted at the Swinomish Lodge in Anacortes, and we just got an incredible look into what educators from tribal and public school districts are doing to make a much better impact in the lives of students of all identities and nations here in our state. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any opposition to approving the agenda and minutes as presented? Hearing none, the agenda and minutes are approved as presented. Are there any objections to approving the consent agenda as presented? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved as presented. For those here who are at their first board meeting or their fifth and still want to learn a little bit more, those are just ways for us to get a few items out of the way that happen every month or nearly every month. It's warrant vouchers, personnel issues, that sort of thing. So it just happens in one fell swoop, and then we move on to other items. And the next item that we move on to is our student board members report. I'll turn it over to Carter and Callahan.
All right. The first thing on our report is the ASB elections in the high school this week. We had successful elections with lots of campaigning and voting, which is good. And ultimately, we have now assigned positions to everyone.
Including?
Me and Callahan.
Okay, AP tests were this month, and they're wrapping up. I think our last tests are next week. And so I think everyone that's taken them is excited for them to be over, but I think everyone's happy. And I think it was an enriching experience.
There was also a band concert and a choir concert coming up soon. The jazz band concert is next week also.
Leadership is wrapping up our big buddy mentorship program. Prom week and the dance were really successful. There was a Model UN bake sale to raise money for their conferences. And then Spanish Club also donated money to people in need through Kiva.
For high school sports, boys golf had one person go to state, and tennis had a doubles team qualify for state also. Track has individuals and the 4x200 girls team going to state also. State standoff was today, which is always really fun.
Our year is wrapping up and students are finishing strong, and we're very proud of each and every Falcon.
Now I'd like to touch on the senior prank and the senior parade and cancellation, along with the senior barbecue and field day. Last Monday, 37 seniors participated in a prank that involved toilet papering the school, among lots of other things. So as punishment, the senior parade and barbecue were canceled, and field day was pushed back so seniors cannot attend. I would like to emphasize that the effect this is going to have on the larger school district community, which includes elementary students. I've spoken with middle school underclassmen and elementary students, and this is something that kind of just unites the community, the senior parade. Many elementary students were bummed that they wouldn't get to see their family friends or older siblings parade through the hallways. And this is just something that's always kind of united the community and the larger district community, which I think is just so valuable and kind of harmful to take away. This is also something that was done by only 37 people, and this is kind of punishing the entire class for it. There's also a whole other section of the class that is uninvolved from this that are now losing things like field days and barbecues, and mainly the senior parade because of the actions of 37. I just want to emphasize that the parade is really something that just unites people, in my opinion, and there's lots of students' opinions, and I've heard a lot of feedback from students. Now on to the middle school. Middle school band concerts for wind ensemble and jazz took place. The ASB election started Monday for middle school students, and the elections are on the 31st. So campaign week is going on, basically. The Olympics Assembly and Science Fair is on June 11th. Anyone who is interested is invited. 8th grade dance planning has gone really well from what I've heard. I spoke with the ASB down there, and they think it's going really good this year, and the ASB has been well organized. Incoming freshmen received their positions also for high school ASB, which is exciting.
For the elementary school, there was a kindergarten information night last Tuesday with pizzas and presentations. The local preschools visited kindergarten classrooms, the playgrounds, and had the opportunity to try riding the buses last week. Elementary students' SBAC testing started last week also, with a Change the Vibe Spirit Week to motivate and cheer on 3rd through 5th graders. WIN and PTA provided healthy snacks for during testing, and a popsicle celebration is going to be, I think, this Friday to celebrate the end of SBACs. Also, there was a Gaga put, which was purchased by the PTA for the playground, and that was set up last Sunday. Students are being trained on how to play Gaga ball in PE.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the board?
I want to thank you for speaking up about the prank. I know that your role here is to channel the voice of students, and that can be challenging sometimes when it's on a challenging topic, and it shows real leadership to bring forward an uncomfortable topic like that. Callahan, I have a question. How was running for student rep different than running for ASB?
I think ASB, there was less like introduction to the rep, like who was running, and it was more just based on like who you knew and who you felt you almost liked best. And then student board rep was more based on who you felt would like represent the school and like who would bring your voice to the board in like the most effective way.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next item, which is public comment. Do you have a timer ready? Carl. So come on up to the mic, please. Make sure it's on, and then note your name and so hit the red. Yep, there you go. Perfect. So please note your name and where generally, like Clinton, Langley, Freeland, whatever, and then go ahead.
Okay, so I'm Norma Fico. I have two students at the high school, and I'm here. We live in Freeland, and I wrote a letter of regarding the principal's reaction to the senior prank that I would like to present to you and read it. To the school board of South Whitby High School. We're writing to express our deep concern and disappointment regarding the recent incident involving the reaction of Principal John Patton towards a senior prank that took place at South Whitby High School. This past Sunday, a group of students organized a senior prank, which was intended to be a lighthearted and harmless event to celebrate their final year of South Whitby. Prior to the prank, Principal John Patton addressed the senior class during a senior meeting and made statements that they were interpreted by the students as giving them permission to proceed with the prank, as long as it adhered to certain guidelines outlined by the principal himself. During this meeting, Principal Patton explicitly mentioned that there should be no damage caused, jokingly referred to past pranks in the history of the school, and even explicitly prohibited the use of live animals. These statements led the students to believe that the principal was not only aware of the prank, but also supportive of it, as long as it remained within the boundaries he had set. However, to our utter surprise and disappointment, Principal John Patton has now denied ever giving permission for the prank to take place. Not only does this contradict his previous statements, but it also puts the students in a difficult position. They followed the guidelines set by the principal, fully believing that they were acting within the rules and expectations of the school. To threaten them with charges of misdemeanor after the fact is both unfair and unjust, not to mention a complete overreaction, especially when there was no damage whatsoever. We understand that maintaining discipline and order within the school is utmost importance, but it is equally important to ensure the students are treated fairly and that their expectations are not misinterpreted or manipulated. The actions of Principal John Patton have caused confusion and distress among the senior class, who were looking forward to a memorable and enjoyable end to their high school journey. As of now, the statements of Principal Patton has made implies that currently has no intention of pressing charges, but this statement is written in a manner where it leaves an open door where if the students breathe or sneeze the wrong way, Principal Patton will go ahead and press charges. We believe this result in an unsafe and untrustworthy environment. I kindly request that the school board conduct a thorough investigation into this matter. It is imperative to rectify the situation and ensure that the students involved are not unfairly penalized for an event that was initially deemed acceptable by the principal himself. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I believe that by addressing the issue, we can uphold values of fairness and integrity that our school community holds dear. Yours sincerely, the parents. Well, my husband.
Thank you for sharing that letter with us.
We live in Clinton. Okay.
Thank you. We just want to make sure that those who are online can hear.
Okay. So my name is Desiree Nash. My daughter is Gigi Nash, and she's South Whitby. We live in Clinton. And I'm just going to mirror her letter so that I don't repeat, But from what I gathered after speaking with the vice principal as well, I feel that there was a knee-jerk reaction by the principal. I think he got a little hot under the collar whenever he saw more than he expected, but there was no damage, for the paper and balloons. So I feel like there was a miscommunication, obviously. And we would like to see a reversal of the senior activities that were from them.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Don Tarantino. I live in Freeland, Washington. My son was one of the first ones called out for the prank. I believe Tarantino comes closer to the end of the alphabet, but he was the very first one called out, and I'm not sure why, because he doesn't even attend South Whitby right now. He attends Snow Isle. and he's not here. He sat in the commons, blew up balloons, thought it was fun to share some camaraderie with his senior friends that he doesn't get to see anymore because he doesn't attend school here anymore. He is away. And he thought, okay, this is what we are doing. I'm so excited to spend the last days because I don't get to attend school here anymore. This is something fun I want to do. This is what everybody's been deemed. He has several friends who are high on, homecoming queen, prom queen, India Ballora, high up there here. And that's one of his very best friends. And she attends every meeting. She has been on every senior court, met with Mr. Patton several times, and several other students are, he's in a very elite friend group. Some of his very elite friends are sitting here in attendance today to fight for what they feel is right and what was taken away from them because of something that was miscommunicated. And I don't think it was maliciously done. I feel Carter spoke very well. My son has younger siblings, younger cousins and family members who attend the elementary school, the middle school, and they're going to miss out seeing, what their older cousin gets to, miss out on. They don't get to do their parade. They don't get to have their moving up ceremony, their wave and everything else, because unfortunately that gets taken away from them because they didn't do a good job with the toilet paper. Back in my day, if you toilet papered something, you couldn't see green, you couldn't see the gym, you couldn't see things. Previous classes here have had a cow upstairs. Tell me that cow didn't make a mess on the floor. When they flooded the place and had thousands of goldfish, tell me who had to clean that up. The class expected to be able to clean up the toilet paper and the balloons. Instead, a teacher was called, whose badge got stolen by this child. I believe Mr. Patton's son attended school here, and I believe that son used to use Mr. Patton's keys to go in the gym and play basketball after hours, because I have seen him use that badge, use the keys after hours. Sterling, I have seen him when I was there for open gym, use his badge, use his keys for after hours. I believe Mr. Davies' son used his keys to be on campus after hours. I believe that the Davises, Morgan, was here after hours and used her keys as well. So there are several students previously, there was no harm done. They did not graffiti the school. They did not do anything malicious. There was no malicious intent to have some fun with some friends, blow up 1,000 balloons, have some streamers. I believe there was a confetti cannon, and have some teepee. It cost them out of their pocket to go do this. They don't have big jobs, but they thought that would be fun. They were told no animals, nothing that would cause harm to the school. Yes, some janitors helped that teacher that got called in. That teacher's job was threatened. The students were threatened with misdemeanors. My child, who's going to be a nurse, who's off to college, came to my work crying and saying, "Mom, I may not have a future. What's the point in me going to college? Because guess what? Mr. Patton's going to give me a misdemeanor for having some fun with my friends." How did I feel? I don't know. Are you a parent, Miss Moshe? Okay. How would you feel if your child going to college would not have a future because now they've got a misdemeanor?
I do want to note that this is not a back and forth discussion.
Apologies.
This is your
But this is my
presentation to the board.
opinion on my child's future possibly being taken away and their last days of fun here at South Whidbey being taken away. And there's malicious would be a cow upstairs making a mess of your upstairs and somebody having to clean that up. This was some paper. If I was called, I would have said, sure, I'll come clean it up because they were having fun. They had some balloons. They had some toilet paper. And apologies for that, for them having a little bit of fun. But to remove their barbecue and their senior stuff, that's pretty bad and pretty harsh.
Thank you for sharing your perspective. We have no one else in person. We do have one You did come in late. If you'd like to sign up or come on up and then sign up afterwards. So just name and location and then.
Sure. My name is Helen Jonier. I'm in Freeland. Can you hear me? um, I'm a parent of a senior. I have, I agree that the senior prank was, in my eyes, pretty tame. And I also, they believed that they had permission to do what they did. For a week, they were planning it after they believed they had permission. So it wasn't a huge surprise. They received notice that the sorry, I'm not used to public speaking, that it was approved by the same way that previous suggestions were not approved. So it seemed legitimately to be an approval of what their prank was. And I have issues with the way that so when state testing was happening and to go off a little bit, and my kids weren't in the regular attended classes, and because they were taking state mandated testing during that time, I get 3 emails that they were not in the classes, but nobody called me when the kids were called in, when the sheriff was called in to talk to my kid, when my kid was threatened with arrest and misdemeanors. And I mean, they thought that they were leaving this meeting in handcuffs at one point. It was a bit of an overreaction for what it was. And I also want to point out that this is the class that did not get their 8th grade promotion. They did not get their 8th grade adventure trip and all of that stuff because of COVID. And they were really looking forward to these things, their parade, their barbecue and things of this nature. And to have this taken away from them for what really was not, I mean, that wouldn't excuse them if they had done something really bad, but I don't agree that this was to the level so that they should lose these privileges. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Hear me? Okay. My name is Bailey Wenzik. I live in Clinton, and I'm a senior, and I'm one of the 37 who participated in the senior prank. I would just like to restate that all of the seniors who went into the senior prank had the knowledge that, or had the idea that Patton had previously approved this, that he was okay with it, that we would not get in trouble. We had all thought that. Like, we did not go into it thinking, oh, like, nobody knows about this, we're trespassing, we're, being bad kids, whatever. We were all under the impression that we had permission from Patton. I think the consequences that have been presented to us are over the top, and I very much regret not getting his approval in writing. I think there was definitely miscommunication between there. But I just want you guys to know that it was not malicious intent for any of the 37. We just wanted to have fun and blow up some balloons and throw some toilet paper. And I am very sad that my senior parade is canceled because I have been looking forward to that since my brother was in high school, like 9 years ago. I was like, that's going to be me one day. And now I don't get to have my senior parade, and the little kids don't get to see us on the streets. We don't get to throw candy. So yeah, there's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing the student perspective. Anyone else? Okay. We do have one online from Charlene Davenport in Clinton. She says, thank you, South Louis School District and Board for supporting implementing DEI programs, truth in history and ELA curriculum, and climate science of our own environment for our students. Thank you for making safety for our students a priority where they are free from discrimination of any kind, physical, emotional, gender identity, or mental harm, and respecting separation of church and state. Thank you for your courage in advocating for the best interests of our South Louis students. I support your position on Resolution 685, participation in legal challenge to I-2081. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that, Charlene. Dr. Moshe has indicated to me that she would like to make a comment at the end of this section of the meeting as well. So, Dr. Moshe.
Would, thank you. I'm taking an unusual step, and I hear the passion, and I understand the perspective that has been shared. I too want to share a perspective because I wasn't anything except showing up because I got a call that the high school needed help. So at 6:15 Monday morning, I got a phone call. And I just want to be really clear that what I saw when I walked in the building was excessive. And I understand the perspective that there was no damage, but I want to be really clear so that it's understood that students entering the main entrance on Sunday night at 9 on its face has no logic. They took keys from parents. If this were a school sanctioned activity, there would be adults present. There would have been information provided, and there would have been a plan for cleanup so that on Monday morning, we weren't spending 2 hours frantically cleaning up, trying to figure out whether or not we could open school. So just to, again, perspective, the entire main office was trashed. Discipline files, we have discipline files that were touched. We had the nurse's office that was entered. We had the assistant principal's office and principal's office entered. The entire attendance desk was covered in sticky notes, and the phone that was supposed to be used that morning in Mary Eaton's space had been used as an intercom and was not functioning as a telephone that morning so that she could make calls out. That's a concern. AP exams, luckily, were stored in an office that was not entered, because had that office been entered, those tests that students had taken would have been invalidated because the security would have been breached. Classrooms were trashed. I'm not making it up. We saw those classrooms. There were saran wrap desks, toilets. There was toilet paper stuffed into toilets. Now, there were 37 people, so not every student did everything, but this is what was found that morning that I saw. The thing that upset me the most was that there was toilet paper and items on the roof of the school, and the roof of the school was accessed through a 15-foot porthole with a ladder that didn't reach the top, which means the scuff marks on the side were obviously somebody hoisting themselves up and kicking themselves up onto the roof. If somebody had fallen from that roof, this would be a very different conversation. And so I just want to make the perspective of what was seen also known. I understand that kids didn't intend. That's what I'm hearing. They didn't intend for it to be a situation that was dangerous. There were glass vials, apparently stink bombs, that no longer had an odor by Monday morning, but the glass was still around. The entire gymnasium was toilet papered. The mess was to the point where it did take 2 hours, and it wasn't just a teacher. It was the entire maintenance staff who was outside getting ready for graduation. It was the custodial staff, it was administrative staff, and it was the teachers that we could call in early. So again, yes, was the reaction that the school had been vandalized and call the police? Absolutely. That's what happened. Now, I know Mr. Patton is here and can also speak to this. I'm not telling you this because I'm defending or not defending. I'm telling you what I saw when I walked in that building on Monday morning. It's very different than just a few balloons and some kids having some fun. It took quite a bit of effort, and there was also some real concern that we had a breach of security. Again, students coming into a building to decorate even just the commons but they went into the main office and into all the offices in the main office because they gained access to it. That's a concern. So that's what I really wanted to be able to share, is the perspective of it was a little bit bigger than what it seems to be portrayed as. And so again, you know, John's available if the board has questions. I support his decision.
Thank you for sharing that perspective. Mr. Patton, did you want to make a comment as well?
Again, I think it's really important. There is a false narrative that I approved this. If this was something that I approved and something that I organized, obviously there would be adults, obviously there wouldn't be damage, there wouldn't be access, there would be cleanup. So again, I did not approve this. This was not sanctioned by South Whitby High School. I agree that I think our students went in there with I don't think they had ill intentions, but I think in watching the surveillance video, it grew bigger and bigger and bigger, and it was quite a disruption. I've talked to quite a few of our staff members who were also very disappointed. One of the major things is we think about these students that are graduating here very soon, that our staff has helped the last 4 years in and outside the classroom. So there's some disappointment there. Of those 37, there's actually 41, my last count, 41 students involved. And every one of those students is a great student. Really, we love them. We think they're great. Again, I don't think they had ill intentions. The other piece is we are going to have a great scholarship night honoring all of our students. We're going to have a farewell assembly where our staff gives awards to our students. This is not going to affect those students that were involved. We're going to have a great graduation. So I think that's just what I want to share right now.
Thank you for sharing your perspective as well. I don't see any further Q&A or any further comments from those online, which has grown to 21 at this point. Is there anyone else signed up in person? Okay. Thank you all very much for. We can do one more and then we're done. Please sign up afterwards.
My name is Amber Fickle. I was one of the students involved in the prank. I would just like to say that in a meeting with Patton, he did Mr. Patton, he did say to all of us, implying that this prank was okay for us to do. He spoke to Grace Jones individually and gave her permission. There's other students that were involved in other conversations where he said, it's great that you've talked to a principal about this because you get to have more fun with it. And then in the meeting stated that we shouldn't do any damaging or any animals. None of that was involved. We stayed within the guidelines. As a student, this scared me a lot. As Max's mom said, he wants to be a nurse. I included want to be a nurse, and this could have jeopardized my future. As a principal, his job is to protect us as students and educate us and prepare us for our future. And for a little prank, for us to have fun, wanted to take our futures away in an instant. I think it was an overreaction, and it wasn't necessary. We all agreed, and there is text proof from days before that we would have cleaned up the prank, and it was already in our plans too. Now they're holding that against us and saying that other people had to clean it up for us, and I feel it's unfair when all of us agreed that we were going to clean it up, but they never gave us the opportunity. And if they had, we would have been there in an instant cleaning up our mess. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for sharing your perspective as well. We will now move on from public comment. We will go into our new business. Our first action item is Memorandum 2324-31, approval of Resolution 685, board support of district's participation in legal challenge to I-02-2081. Dr. Moshe, if you'd like to give a brief explanation.
Yes, so earlier this year, the legislature passed Initiative 2081, and we support the Parent Bill of Rights. What is of concern to the district is the not the continuation of the rights that are already in law, but the fact that there's going to be a strain on staff because of the changes in this law that were not vetted, and the law goes into effect June 6th, like 2 weeks. It changes things like the turnaround time for records requests goes from 45 days to 10 days. Teachers need to plan events, including any added fees and any outside of school time before they leave for the summer so that it can be announced before we return in the fall. Teachers need to set up a system of inspection of all textbooks, curriculum, and supplemental materials used in the classroom. Now, again, those materials are available and people can look at them, but it's the idea that teachers have to make them available immediately. Students actually lose all confidentiality. Right now, if a student asks for a mental health counselor or a school nurse, and they choose to do that confidentially, and they are above the age of 13, it's their right to that confidentiality. That's gone under this new rule. And teachers will need to set up notice for opt-out for anything that could be considered to touch on topics of any belief, morality, political affiliation, so on and so forth. And that sounds good on its face, but if we think about it in context, for example, if we're talking about the Civil War, and that goes down the road of people of color, and those conversations get difficult in a classroom, that teacher is now at risk. And so our concern here is that there's not been enough time and the law has not been vetted clearly enough. And the impacts on other laws have not been discussed clearly enough. So we were approached by the ACLU, and it is up to the board, but that's essentially the context of what this is about. So it's really up to the board whether you want the district to move forward and be part of this or stay away.
And now open for board discussion.
Dr. Moshe, I share your concerns about this initiative. I also have concerns about the time and resources it may take away from the district to be a part of this suit. Do you have any understanding of what this would involve for the district?
My understanding is that if the board chooses to enact this resolution, that's it. That the ACLU actually is taking this case up, and their lawyers are actively involved in this, and we are simply what's the term? A signer, like a co-signer, but not involved financially in any way or with any time.
Thank you.
I have concerns with the law that was passed, and I have appreciation for our intention to consider this resolution, because I think there are aspects of the law that received inadequate study in terms of their potential impact on the safety of some of our most vulnerable students. And I particularly wonder about the potential impact of the law on LGBTQ plus students and on students experiencing mental health issues, behavioral health issues, and looking to the school as a place to access supports that may not be available to them through other channels. And so I appreciate you bringing this forward for our consideration.
One other group I'd add to that is those who've experienced sexual assault or domestic violence in their home.
I would say that any way that we can show that we support LGBTQ plus students in our schools and show the students that we care about them and support them, to basically know like financial obligations and know there's no harm to the district for this, and it greatly shows students that we support them. I think that's a good action to take.
I think I also have concerns about the law as it is written, but I also want to challenge the board to consider the narrative that this is no time, effort, on our part. While the litigation would not require staff time or effort, we should be mindful and considerate, and this is not me saying not to take it on, but that this is not a passive stance for us to take, and that there will be community conversations that we will need to articulate out as to why. And so while it may not be a financial or staffing commitment, it is a communications commitment from the board as to the importance of it. Again, I don't think that that's a reason to not move forward, but I want to articulate that we will be putting forth effort in a different way.
And to complement that, the law as it stands also causes us to have to put forth considerable staff effort to meet the requirements of the law. So either way, we have an obligation.
I have concerns as well about just echoing what my fellow board members have said and the student representative. Thank you all for chiming in. I too have concerns about the care with which this was undertaken and the unintended or unexpected consequences of it. And also do very much want to ensure that we are doing everything we can to protect students who might be in social or emotional or physical danger and have nowhere else to turn besides school, psychologist or nurse or other person in the school. I'd like to get student advisory votes on Memorandum 2324-31.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving Memorandum 2324-31, approval of Resolution 685, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. The memorandum and hence the resolution has been approved. We'll move on to Memorandum 2324-32, approval of update to Southerby School District Policy 5005, employment disclosures. This is one that we looked at our last board workshop, had some discussion with those present. Is there any further discussion to be had on this? In general, this is a update of language, not major substantive updates. Okay. May I have advisory votes, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving Memorandum 2324-32, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Memorandum 2324-32 is approved. Memorandum 2324-33, approval of update to Southerby School District Policy 6250, cellular phones purchasing. This is the other one that we discussed at our last board workshop. It's something that Dr. Moshe has said is not used currently, but we wanted to make sure that we're updating policies as they come up. And as you can see, this has not been touched since 2011, so it's probably time. Any discussion or debate? Okay. Advisory votes from our student representatives.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of approving Memorandum 2324-33, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Memorandum has passed. Our final item of new business, Memorandum 2324-34, approval of the WASDA Annual Conference Presentation Proposal. I'm going to turn that over to Director Greenherron.
Thank you. For context, the Washington State School Directors Association puts on a conference every fall, and they invite participants to apply to give presentations. As part of our board goals to advocate up and out, meaning to board members in other districts, I thought it would be great to submit a few presentation proposals. This wouldn't commit us to having to make any of these presentations. It would just give us the opportunity to give these presentations if we wanted to. I brought it to the board because in addition to my time and submitting the proposals and if selected, creating the presentations, it would probably also take the time of other board members, perhaps Dr. Moshe. I would also love to have, no matter the topic, student voice included. So potentially our student representatives or other students. So it felt appropriate to bring it for discussion.
Any comments or discussion or debate on this?
I just want to say thank you for the work to prepare for our potential readiness to submit these proposals to WASDA. And I always appreciate learning from our peers when we attend such conferences. And I think that there are several recent experiences or ongoing projects or examples that we can draw from that would be of interest to our peers. And I just so appreciate you taking the initiative to work this up for us.
Agree completely with that. For those who are present, the three presentations that were proposed are one on getting a bond approved, one on our professional communications policy, which was adopted with input from a wide array of stakeholders, and then a presentation on the our English language arts curriculum adoption.
Thank you. I forgot to mention the specifics. And to be clear, I'm not necessarily advocating we do all three presentations. I think that would spread us thin. My approach was sort of a scattershot approach, see what the committee was interested in, and hopefully they'd be interested in one. If they're interested in more than one, we would probably choose one and only do one.
I do want to be thoughtful of staff time on this. And I know that you mentioned that as a concern, but I did just want to reach out to see if you thought that this was doable with the work that Director Greenherron has already done and has discussed being willing to do going forward.
I certainly always want to support the board's work. And I know that Director Greenherron has proposed this and I support it. I just want to be mindful of a couple of things. Number one, anything that we do is going to involve staff time. You know, if we do the ELA work, it's really going to be our ELA implementation. That's not the superintendent's time, that's staff time. Any of these will take some staff time. So we've got to be mindful of that. Number two, I think we're in Spokane. So we have to be mindful of travel and putting people up. So I just want to be really clear on what the ask is. That's all. I think that it does go towards the board's goals to communicate up and out. I know it's been a couple of years asking, can we present at WASDA? And there's never a good time. So if there's a time to do it, it's going to be as the superintendent's going out, not as a new one's coming in, because that person's time will be on everything else. So I think the window of opportunity, if you want to take an opportunity, is going to be now. As much as it all feels easy now, and then when November comes, it'll be, wow, that seemed like a good idea at the time. So again, just being mindful of that. I think early in the school year, like November, is far easier to deal with than if it were now. So
I think what I would add is with the ELA curriculum adoption presentation, while I know it was touched on and an example in the last presentation, I don't think that presentation encompassed the entirety of where we came from and all of the shifts that we made in our curriculum adoption process. And I also think it would be an opportunity to present the recent data. And I think what is missing a lot of times in these presentations is they do a good job of showcasing how the adoptions were done, but we don't then correlate it to what was the impact on students. And I think that being a year out, we have some really good data on what was the impact on students.
I'm just going to put Kayla on the spot because she told me something the other day that was kind of shocking. So what'd you tell me?
Oh, it's really pretty also to add to it. SBAC scores come in kind of fast sometimes and they trickle in so we don't have everyone. But we were looking at grade 10 ELA adoption. 90% of students were at a level 3 or a level 4. So
So I think if we have a choice of one presentation to do, being mindful of staff, I would say that I would pick the ELA adoption process, and I would also ask Dr. Moshe's permission to have Kayla support us at that conference with that presentation.
We might have to be a whole party going over for that presentation. There's a lot of work that went into it. And then it's across the board. So, again, I don't know what we'll eventually decide on, but I totally agree that the ELA adoption really was beyond our expectations. And I also think that, maybe it's too much, but using an equity lens, making sure that, we took into account what we learned adopting the math curriculum as we went forward to adopt ELA. It's exciting to think about what we're seeing.
It's a really perfect example of how if you meet the needs of those on the outside who aren't in the middle, everyone moves up. And that was really the intention and the change was how are the voices who aren't being served by the education represented in these decisions? And this is our first example where we've been able to really put that front and center, and we're getting amazing data from it.
I'd also like to note the timing on this would be getting our district in front of a large number of possible superintendent candidates right at the time when we're looking for applications.
Kayla, you want to come to WASDA?
Can't wait.
Any input from our student representatives, particularly Carter, who's been to WASDA before, but either of you?
I think it'd be fun to present. I've seen other student reps present and other groups present and include student voices into their presentations. I think it'd be a beneficial thing to do.
Director Greenhair, could we bump it to a 90-minute presentation?
Yes, that would mean more preparation work for us to fill 90 minutes. But if you feel that that would be the appropriate duration to tell the story and to add value.
Since I'm very clearly invested in this happening, I am happy to be part of that development. And I'm a Virgo, so it'll be done well before November.
Certainly.
Okay, any further comments, debate, or discussion? Okay, student representatives, can we have advisory votes?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving memorandum 2324-34, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The memorandum has been approved. That completes our new business for the evening. We'll move on to our reports and our financial and enrollment report. Is this going to be Mr. Pullman, Mr. Field? Please, welcome.
There we go. So we'll start with our normal enrollment report for May. We're still trending how we are, just even with budget, which is hard to do, but we're 0.36 off of our budget for FTE. Slide here. Our trend here is on the bottom with the budget is the gray line and we're the black dotted line right there on the bottom. Again, just bouncing right along the budget like we have all year long, just status quo as we have for the last several months. Here's our normal timeline, 2/3 of the way through the year, 71% of our revenue. That jumped up quite a bit because we have our collections in April. And then we're 66% of our expenditures, so right on line with the year. Everything's trending as it has historically and as expected. There's nothing of surprise or significant note in the month of April for our financials. This is comparing to last year. The red line is our expense for 23-24. The blue line is 22-23, so you can kind of see it's just following that same trajectory as it has in the past. Revenue is also doing the same, where the black line is 23-24 and the green line is 22-23. Again, just right along with the normal trends, and that jump in April is due to our April tax collections. This is just showing our expenditures with encumbrance. Salaries and payroll are slightly over. It's just as we add staff, it's largely due to special ed staff paras likely. If we need more specific detail on that, I'm happy to get that back to you on the exact cause of that, but it's still relatively right on with what we budgeted within 2%.
I appreciate the general detail.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This next slide here is our actual expenditures and encumbered expenditures for September to April across all the timelines. So we're right along the line where we've historically been with actual expenditures and encumbered expenditures in red. And this again is comparing August to April across all those years. So it's a like comparison across all those sections. The next slide here is a percentage of our budget, including encumbrances. And again, we're just right along what we have historically between 97 and 96%. So again, kind of the status quo as we have it historically given this time of the year. This is our fund balance as a percentage of expenditures. And I just keep saying it's just following the line as it has in the past, same sort of trajectory, the same sort of up and down. It's trending as expected. There's, like I said, there wasn't really any significant expenditures of note in the month of April this year. Here's the high overview of our other funds. Revenue year to date for all the other funds, again, just trending as anticipated. And then any questions?
Not a question, but more of a comment. I really just appreciate that we are status quo and recognize that that is due to a lot of dedicated hard work of people in this district. And there are not very many districts who are having board meetings where finances are status quo.
Director Down said what I was going to say. And I also have a question. Has anything changed or is there any new information that would impact the budget planning process for next school year?
There's no new information other than there will be a little more revenue coming in starting with the month of May. There was a few changes to the legislative laws in the last session that are retroactive. So we will see, a couple $100,000 more in revenue than we anticipated, which means our fund balance will go up slightly. So I'm looking at maybe 4.8, 4.9 million ending fund balance instead of the 4.5, 4.6 we thought we were going to be. As far as the budget coming up, there's really nothing new or different that we haven't talked about. There isn't really any changes. We're still looking at trying to get to that $1 million figure roughly as far as a reduction. Currently working through the staffing part, which is kind of the bulk of our budget, always. Couple of weeks we'll have a better idea what that actually looks like and, how do we get those other reductions in there. But there's nothing that I see that's really new or different that's coming up that, everything that took effect in the last legislative session was retroactive to this year. So we've already planned for that because we knew that it was happening.
Thank you.
Mr. Field, I appreciate you stepping in pretty much straight on status quo, as you put it several times. Looking forward to seeing if there's anything that you think that you'd like to change with this also, although I very much appreciate everything Mr. Pullman has done and continues to do. Just always nice to see what new eyes spot out and might want to highlight.
Yeah, for the general fund stuff, I think the information is appropriate. As we get into the capital project stuff, we'll be doing more detailed comparison of what we have on our bond list and how we're delivering those projects. We're still really in the early phases of how we're going to account for those things as far as reporting outwards, and we'll be in touch more to get a better feel of what you're looking for in outward reporting, but internally reporting, being able to show our promises, made promises kept with the capital projects and being able to account for it so we can generate the reports to show here's the list of projects and here's where they were delivered. So we're working through that right now. The bond hasn't even sold yet, so we still have time to develop how we're going to report that outward. So there'll be more robust capital projects reporting going forward.
Excellent. Thank you.
Oh, and I'm working now, just send some information out today to start working on the ASB budget where we'll have more student interaction in the presentation, hopefully. I still have to talk with the students to make sure what they're up for, but getting more involvement in them with the development of the ASB budget. And we potentially could do more robust ASB reporting if students were interested in presenting monthly. That door is all open and we're working through that now.
That sounds like a great 2025 WASDA presentation.
I can tell you, we got a pretty good team over at Exec, and I'm sure that they'll be excited to get involved with stuff like that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the affirmative action report. Mr. Pullman, is that you?
I guess it is. Yeah, so basically this is a required report to the board on an annual basis and what actions we're taking. And really, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you because I'm sure you've already read it, but it revolves around the education and training that we're doing for our staff, and really trying to remove bias and barriers in our hiring process so that it is a situation that, I guess if I talk about creating a system where you're looking at the metrics as opposed to looking at a resume or something like that. So that's really what we're looking at doing with this. It is time to do a new affirmative action plan. They're a 5-year plan and it ran out at the end of COVID. So we need to, that's a goal for next year, is to work on that. Not my goal, but somebody's goal. So, you know, if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but you can basically see the hiring pool that we have and the percentage of who we hire out of that pool. I guess there's not much else to tell you about it other than it's an ongoing process. We work on our job descriptions, on our hiring documentation, on our screening process, you know, all that thing to try to remove anything that would make it difficult for somebody that's out of a different culture or whatever to get through that process. So, and then the website, Christy does a great job of updating that to kind of follow that same line of thought. So anyways.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We will move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Moshe.
Thank you. The first thing I want to share with you is the annual review of policy 31. I'll do that next, Christy, sorry. The annual review of policy 3123, which is withdrawal prior to graduation. As you can see, our students that are no longer here, for the most part, either graduated or moved. So we have a couple that didn't enroll, but really this report is, there's nothing to report. This report is meant to report to you about students who drop out of school. We give you a list of anybody who left. Nobody dropped out. So back to what Christy was originally showing us is an invitation. And we do need to know if any board members wish to attend. And if we have more than 2, then we will create an agenda for that. It is, we were invited as South Whidbey to go to this this celebration at Snow Isle Skills Center because we have, it's in cooperation with Whidbey Tell and students learning fiber optics and them being the first in the nation to do this collective work together. So as the district that houses Whidbey Tell, we're invited to go and celebrate. So it's this coming Tuesday, 11 to 1. I don't know if there are, I know at least one board member opted out. I don't know if folks want to join me. I will be going over and you are welcome to join. And there's lunch.
I just need to check my calendar. I'm very interested.
Okay. And I don't, we can bring our students, right, Mr. Patton? Will you be there?
I think I have school at the time. But I will say I appreciate anyone who goes to that because I know that sometimes Snow Isle students feel left out of the overall school culture, and that's a great way to show that we still value them as a South Whidbey Falcon too.
Thank you for adding that in. That's really powerful.
I can't attend due to other commitments, but I will say that the lunch that we ate last time we went to Snow Isle was the best pizza I've ever had in my life. So if you can go for the celebration and the lunch, then more power to you.
Okay. Well, if you are able to come, or if you change your mind, please let Christy know, and we'll make sure we take care of an agenda if we have to create one. Wanted to give you a little bit of an update on the bond work this summer. We had to make some last minute decisions. Everything will get done, but not everything that we planned for this summer will be done this summer. Right now, we had to limit it to the elementary playground and the high school, middle school courtyard. The 2 vestibule projects are on hold because of procurement of supplies and materials, as well as the concern that it would delay too much into the school year and cause too much disruption. So that's one thing. The good news is there's a lot of planning in a bond process. Like any construction, it takes a lot of time, like painting. You have to do a whole lot of work, and the painting itself doesn't take a long time. Well, we expect a lot of work to be going on the summer of 25. The summer of 24 is still more planning and a couple of projects. Tomorrow, Paul and I will be involved in, you notice how Dan just keeps getting not involved? Just want to point that out. So Paul and I will be involved in what's known as, and quite frankly, I don't know the acronym, PRC process, but it's basically the process where we get permission to get a construction manager. And it's a process. I mean, we have to present, it's an hour long. We practiced today, so hopefully they will approve us, and then we will get that GCCM on board by the end of August, and that person or firm will oversee all of the projects and make sure checks and balances on that we have contractors, that they're doing their job, that they're complying with what the owner rep, which is parametrics, has to say, and what Paul has to say, and somewhere along the line what the superintendent has to say. It's really it's a heavy lift, and I really am so pleased that Paul joined our team because he has this kind of experience. And so's Dan, pleased that Paul has joined our team. And that's all the superintendent has for updates.
Thank you very much.
Can I de-acronymize for you?
Oh, did you look it up?
I did. The Project Review Committee, or PRC, mandated by RCW 39.10.220, is responsible for reviewing and approving public body certifications and project approval applications for the utilization of general contractor, construction manager, and design build delivery methods of public works construction.
Director Jackson, do you have anything to add for legislative report?
No, I just want to express that we got some really good community interaction and feedback during our Q&A session last week, including some questions about both what does the district do to set its legislative priorities in terms of preparing for a legislative session advocacy, and then also what can the community do to help echo those concerns or more general concerns that our community has and wants to bring to the legislature about public education. And so it was a robust conversation, which I really appreciated. And I definitely took some personal responsibility for improving our process in the coming year. As the board's legislative representative, I want to make a stronger effort to, help the board review WASDA and WASA's policy positions in terms of our choice making around which of those positions we want to lend our voice to. B, have more reporting out to our community during school board meetings before and during the legislative session about our priorities in advocating to the legislature. And then C, there's ongoing work of relationship building and relationship tending with our elected representatives. And so this week I'm sending out notices to our legislators and senator just to say thank you for visiting with us on the Hill. Thank you for your ongoing work. And we are very fortunate to have a representative in our district who is vice chair of the House Education Committee. So that's a particular relationship where there's an opportunity to get an inside scoop about what's going on in that committee during the next session. And I was appreciative of the community's reminder of the importance of tending those relationships now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any board comments or reports? I mentioned this at the beginning, but I want to also mention at the end, for those who are here in person, you can see some of the signs up around the room to provide your feedback on the superintendent search firm. For those who are online or watching this video later, you can go to our agenda online on our website on board docs. You can get there from the school board page on our district website. There is a QR code to let you fill out that survey and the information to help you fill that out, which is to say the proposals and the interviews that we did earlier today will be online soon. We really want to get as much community feedback as we can on this, so please tell all your friends. I believe that's everything. This board will, we will adjourn this meeting and go into executive session for yes, sorry. We will move into executive session for no longer than 1 hour to discuss superintendent, review performance of a public employee and negotiations on the performance of a publicly bid contract. Thank you and good night.